Hey guys, in this video we're going to put together a great camera mount for our Ender 3 version 2 for the Raspberry Pi camera version 2, so stick around. The biggest drawback of these types of 3D printers, I believe, is the amount of time that they take to print, and that print can go bad at any time during the process. So it's best to find a way to remotely view your prints and eventually maybe have a software review your video for problems so that you can have your life back. This video is going to be focused on the bracket and the mount itself for the camera. In a separate video, we'll go over all of the parts you're going to need to get set up with Raspberry Pi, with Octoprint, with Spaghetti Detective, with Timelapse as well. So after searching for quite a while, what I decided to do was remix the design on Thingiverse. So here's a design that I like. This is for the CR10. And the problem with this design for me is that it's just too big. It won't fit in my enclosure. But it also doesn't give the viewpoint that I'm looking for. I want a viewpoint that is just down a little bit lower so I can see the nozzle, I can see the printing happening. Alright, so we're in Fusion 360 now. What I've done already is brought in the original design as a mesh. Now if you're not familiar with doing that, you just say insert mesh and you bring in the file that you're looking for, whether it be an STL or an object file. Now these mesh files aren't really usable in a lot of ways that you're maybe used to in Fusion 360, but you can combine, you can slice as well. So the problem with this particular design for me is that it's not intended for this particular Pi camera. It is meant for what looks like a fisheye lens. And because of that, you can adjust the focus when it's on the machine or mounted in the case, and that's a big problem. So what I've done is sliced off the bottom using a plane, and that gives me access for the little focus adjustment knob to be used while it's mounted in there. Okay, so now we're on to the arm, and you can see that this would be great for a large print, and you're getting far enough back, you're able to get good focus as well. I like that they integrated the cable management right in there, although I think I'll go with something a little different that's easier to print with no overhangs like it has. I print with ABS and overhangs are a little bit difficult. Alright, so first we need to get a reference plane. We want to confirm some dimensions as well. 4.10, that's perfect. The aluminum plate is 4 millimeters. Now, even though we're copying a design that's proven more or less to work, I'd like to add some dimensions to try and round them off a little bit so that's easier for reference, and also if we want to manipulate anything in the future, we can easily do that just by going back into these sketches. So I'm shortening this up a little bit. That's going to do a really good job with reducing the amount of vibration. Off to the side where it mounts to the bed, there really isn't a lot that I can do with the thickness because that's where the adjustment knob for the bed leveling goes as well. One thing that's critical with these pivot arms is the distance between the two pivot points. It needs to be applying some pressure so that it keeps the camera in place and it can't rotate during the print. If it's too loose, it's just going to move around during the printing process. It's not going to give the result that we're looking for. So we've got the two parts that we need to actually put together, but what I'm going to do is print them as two separate pieces and join them with essentially a mortise and tenon connection, like you would see in woodworking. And the reason is because I want to print this part laying down, and I don't want to print it with supports if I can avoid that. So I do want to print this one laying down in this orientation because it's going to maximize the strength in the direction that I need. And I want to make sure that this is as stiff as possible so that there's very little vibration that's possible to travel through to the camera. Alright, so we've just done a little mortise and tenon connection here real quick, and that can be assembled with acetone or super glue, or if it's done really well, it can just be a slip fit and if it's tight enough. I've added a few chamfers here just for aesthetics to make it look good and a little bit more refined. So if there's something wrong with this piece here, we don't need to reprint the entire part or vice versa. If we want a longer lower piece, for example, we don't need to reprint this. All right, so now we're jumped over to Cura. So we need to add a few settings. We need to add top layers, bottom layers, infill density, infill pattern, infill line multiplier to get the result that we're looking for. So what we'll do is set the top and bottom layers to 0. We're going to set the infill density to 25 or whatever you choose. And infill pattern is set to triangles. And the critical one here is infill line multiplier. It's going to double the amount of lines in this case that create the infill, so it creates a much thicker, stiffer infill pattern. So time lapses are really neat to include in your videos for aesthetics, but they're actually really good also for problem solving. You can see when something starts to go bad, whether it's coming away from the build plate or a support going missing, those types of things. So all of our parts are finished. I've used a 0.6mm nozzle. It's probably not the best for these parts because they're very precise and the fit is critical. So I've had to file down a few pieces and some of the pins here and there for a better fit. And I've also sanded the parts so that they look good as well. I'd like to give some credit to the original designer. These parts do fit together really well, and the case for the camera is just a perfect snap fit. Now you can see that the adjustment for the focus can be done while it's mounted in the case, which is just critical. As for mounting the cable, I'm just going to use some double-sided exterior grade mounting tape. The assembly is really simple. Just put the spring into the top portion, fit it underneath the bed, put the screw back through, tighten up the leveling knob, and adjust the level again. Now I'm testing this here, and one thing that I've done is elongated the arm a little bit. So on the Thingiverse website, in the description link below, there's a short version and a long version as well. All that's left to do is adjust the focus and then have some fun with time lapses. Well guys, I hope you enjoyed the video and you got some information from this. If you did, make sure you give me a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. Take care everybody. We'll see you on the next one.